there's a much bigger threat to the men in blue. That's him! Kill the bastard with the video camera! Get him!
Hey guys, it's Rogue Nation here with you, and tonight we're doing a story with this young man sitting here on the screen with me, and he's got a heck of a story, and it aligns with our values because it's misuse of authority, it's abuse of authority, and regular citizens suffered because someone with a little bit of power tried to abuse that power. And it doesn't matter whether it be government or private business. It's just something that should never be allowed. So without further ado, this young man's going to tell us a story. And as you guys always know, we're going to go over some of the paperwork at the end. Okay, Mr. Bruce, go ahead.
Well, I'm not exactly a young man. I'm 66. I'm a grandfather. I'm a registered nurse licensed in Florida. I have the beginnings of age-related dementia, and I'm a highly functional autistic person, which you don't know until you spend some time with me. The autism is me. The age-related dementia has started to affect my speech, but it's manageable at this point in time. I'm a cardiac patient. I had 2 blocked arteries in my heart. The LAD, which is the main artery, was blocked 90%, and the posterior ramus, which is a secondary artery in the heart, was blocked 85%. This is documented, and I went to Cleveland Clinic, Weston Hospital, for a cardiac stent procedure. My situation was such that I bypassed the stress tests and other checks and balances to verify that I needed this, because my symptoms were so bad, my EKG was bad enough that the cardiologist saw that this is something we need to address. I'm also a victim of physical abuse by nurses when I was 4. I was an autistic child. I evidently was a little loud when I needed some stitches, and they slapped me around a bit and wrapped me in a sheet at age 4, and I remember that. And then when I was 17 years old, I was still a minor. I was in the Army, and I was sexually assaulted by a male physician there. Sort of soured me on the Army on that. So ever since then, as an adult, I generally see female physicians, and I take my wife with me, and she's in the room the whole time. And this has not been an issue, and has not been an issue at Cleveland Clinic with the physicians that I saw, up until the point where as an ADA, I would qualify as an ADA vulnerable patient with the autism and the age-related dementia. And incidentally, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but my medical record today has been scrubbed clean of any references to my being autistic or my age-related dementia, which is odd. Somebody has taken the effort to scrub it. So I had gone into the hospital policy-wise. I followed their policy, which was recommended by a patient coordinator in the cardiac cath lab. This is all by the phone and by email. And she put me in touch with the ombudsman office. And some hospitals have patient representatives, other hospitals have ombudsman. In any event, I sent them an email, which is documented, delineating my problem, and that my wife was going to be with me door to door, except in the actual procedure room. And this was not a problem. The person there who's named in the lawsuit, her first name is Hema, she went into the administration. She got permission for me to have my wife there door to door, except in the actual procedure room, and I can live with that. And everything was going to be fine. She sent out an email internally to the affected personnel in the hospital, telling them I was going to be coming in as an adult autistic individual with the age-related dementia, and that my wife was going to be with me as caregiver chaperone. And everything was fine for the first day or so. Then I got a phone call from the nurse manager of the cath lab about this email. Her name is Kristen Thorpe. It's public information. It's in the lawsuit. And she was absolutely livid that I was going to have my wife there. She taunted me, told me she wasn't even going to allow my wife to be in the hospital in the building. She'd have to wait outside for a phone call to come get me. And I refused to be baited. I recognized, because I'm a nurse, she had no business calling me, the patient. You call, if she has a problem, you call administration, who approved the email that was sent out giving her instructions. That is the proper chain of command. I should have never known about it. And that's not what she did. And I reminded her that I was a nurse and that I'm an ADA vulnerable patient and I'm well within my rights. And the hospital administration had at that time properly addressed my rights. And my wife was going to be with me. So the last she said was, well, she'll have the doctor call me. And the doctor never did call. The next morning, my wife and I are getting ready to come into the hospital, and we get a phone call canceling the procedure without explanation and without any rescheduling. Well, we can do it Wednesday. We can do it Friday. No rescheduling. Done deal. Go away. So I contacted the ombudsman woman, Hema, again, and she attitude had changed. She wasn't really helpful. She was, if she had had a spine, I believe at this time that she should have called the director of nursing, complained about the nurse manager, Kristen Thorpe, and they should have worked it out internally to have my wife there. And this is not an unusual thing, especially if you have children. There's always a parent welcome to be there door to door the same way. So we're not asking an arm and a leg from the hospital. Well, anyway, I couldn't get anywhere with them. I still have this 90% blocked artery and 85% blocked artery. So I went ahead and I contacted the Cleveland Clinic home office up in Ohio. It's called the Biomedical Ethics Department. Contacted them, delineated what had happened and how I could support what I'm saying. They said they'll look into it. It took them a week or so. They looked into it. And at that time, now my information is as accurate as I can make it, but the hospital has not cooperated and we've not had discovery in the lawsuit yet. So at this time, it appears that the director of cardiology, Dr. Roberto Kubadu, which is in the complaint, was the chairman of cardiology. He abruptly resigned, abruptly left his practice. So the other doctors had to absorb his patients suddenly without warning. And he left for greener pastures over in Naples. He's working in Naples at a heart institute over there. And this, from what I understand from talking to other people related to this, was a direct result of his department coming under scrutiny by the biomedical ethics people and being embarrassed. How did this happen? Because there's checks and balances. How did this happen that a man with a legitimate cardiac issue and insurance was turned away at the last moment with no recourse? We call it abandonment. In Florida, there's different laws to follow. You have to have what's called continuity of care. A hospital can't simply say, go away, although they do it. But in my case, they got caught at it. So what we know now, to the best of my knowledge, is that Kristen Thorpe went around the situation and directly communicated with the cardiologist, the interventional cardiologist. The primary one was Dr. Kenneth Fromkin, director of their program for interventional cardiology, a really well-trained guy. I didn't have any problems with him when I met him, but I had not met him at that time. I never did meet the chairman, Dr. Roberto Kubadu. And I believe at this time, and again, the hospital has not come forth with any other disputing information, that Kristen Thorpe, the nurse manager, told the doctor that a violent, potentially violent, autistic man is coming in. When he has dementia, he may get up and jump off the operating table, I'm not joking, people, and attack the staff and go looking for my wife if my wife is not there. Keep in mind, I've already got permission from my wife to be there. So these two doctors, to the best of my knowledge at this time, failed to verify anything that she said. They simply took her word, and she's a coworker. They've been working with her for years. They trust her, and she came up and exaggerated the hell out of things. I've never attacked anybody in my life. I'm not a violent person. What can I say? Um, but I am autistic, and the word autism and the word dementia brings out the worst of your mental pictures, and I'm not nowhere near that yet. Now, maybe 10 years from now, who knows what's going to happen? But right now, I got some speech problems. I got some throat problems, and I'm dealing with it on a daily basis. So I'm not violent or anything. So the after a couple interviews with the biomedical people up in Ohio by phone, they ordered the Cleveland Clinic Weston Hospital to do the procedure. I went in with my wife to have the procedure. We were like labeled people, had targets on our back. As soon as we walked in the door, got up where we were supposed to go, people knew who we were, knew what had happened to some degree, and they begrudgingly weren't happy that they were assigned to me. I went ahead and went through the paperwork. I crossed out on the consent form, pictures, which is standard things. I don't want any pictures taken other than what they're doing for the cardiac cath and whatnot. And I wrote on there my wife's to be present, and the nurse there, Mary Howard, the pre-op nurse, which is in the public information of the website, physically tried to wrestle the pen away from me. It's just like, I'm a nurse. What are you doing? Patients every day have the right to say no pictures, or not going to do this, or not going to do that. It's a contract law 101. And she was just beside herself. And as a working nurse, I have many times have patients alter the consent form, what they're going to allow and what they're not going to allow. And it just goes through. Again, nobody's asking for anything weird, but people have their preferences, their religious preferences, social preferences that they may delineate there. Again, the big one is no picture taking, because whether you realize it or not, with Cleveland Clinic, they own the pictures. They can do what they want with the pictures. So you have no recourse, and you're signing that away. Another thing you're signing away is you're giving permission for the procedure or the visit that day and every future office visit, every future procedure. And I'm not about to give permission today for things that may or may not happen in the future. And I'm a nerd. I know this. You just cross it out. It's no big deal. Well, she made it a big deal. But we went ahead and had the procedure started. My wife was with me the whole time. We were doing okay. I got shaved. I'm ready to go. Lying on a gurney. And then a male nurse comes down from the cath lab, which is 50 feet away down the hall. And we talk with him and explain, my wife's supposed to be with me door to door. And he understood everything's fine. Everything wasn't fine. My wife and I go with the gurney. I'm on the gurney. My wife's following. Mary Howard, the nurse, is with my wife next to me. And this male nurse takes me out of the hallway and stops. This is as far as the wife's going. I says, nope. We've already clarified that. Down the hall to the door, she watches me go in the door. Well, he wasn't going to have that. And he's making a big stink about that. So my wife's going to watch me go down the hall. I'm a big boy. I can live with that. Watch me go down the hall. Well, I don't know this, but I'm being led down the hall. This Mary Howard takes my wife away so she's not watching me. We go down the hall a little bit, and then this guy stops the gurney. Not supposed to stop the gurney. He went ahead and starts chatting me up, getting friendly, and I know what's coming. He's got the power thing in his eyes. He's on a power trip, and he wants to get friendly. And I'm not having any of it. And just as I'm getting ready to do something, luckily, he's approaching me. I'm ready. And I believe that there's security video in the hallway, and I've asked for copies of that. But so far, the hospital is not acknowledging that security videos exist. And I will tell you now that I believe, on good authority, he was promptly fired, or shall we say, separated from employment soon thereafter, because I made a formal complaint. Whether I'm the first patient that he stopped in the hallway or the 30th, we don't know yet. I do know, and if you Google sexual assaults sexual misconduct with senior citizens in a hospital or nursing home, you will find there's quite a bit of documentation. Whoever thought the senior citizens would be attracted or attractable or something? I don't know. Anyway, another nurse comes out at the right second and says, "Why is he here?" Meaning me. And the other nurse, his name is Jamine, Jamine Hernandez. And he started him and hawing while I'm waiting for the room was ready when the guy left. They're waiting for me in the room. They don't know why I'm stopped in the hallway. They didn't know I was stopped in the hallway. This guy's coming out looking for me because I should have been in the room 5 minutes ago. So that shocked Mr. Hernandez, RN, back to reality. And then he hammered a bit and took me into the room. I transferred myself to the table. Everything was set up. And another thing, for those of you nurses out there, doctors, I refuse Versed. Versed is a pre-op medication which affects your memory. I'm not about to have anything affect my memories because I already have dementia. There is a known phenomenon with Versed called post-sedation cognitive dissonance or disorder or something like that. It's known. Where patients come out and they're in a fog, and that fog can last for months. I already know that. I'm a nurse. I said no. So I signed a form that says no pre-op, no sedation period. So I was not sedated at any time. My memories are intact for what they are. I had 12.5 of fentanyl and 25 milligrams of Benadryl, diphenhydramine. These are standard medications. They don't affect your memory. I at no time was unconscious. I was conscious through the whole procedure. The procedure went without any problem. Dr. Fromkin knew what he was doing. I don't have a problem with the man other than his judgment in trusting nurse Kristen Thorpe. So the procedure was done. I'm still on the table. He leaves the room, as he should have, went up and got my wife from the waiting room, talked with her, brought her down. She was waiting at the exit of the doors. I was wheeled out as the same words, and that Jamine Hernandez was there. And in front of Dr. Fromkin, I said, "You lied to me. I'm going to make a complaint about what you tried to do." And then he just looked awkward. When I got my nurses, the nurses' notes, the notes from the hospital, which took me 4 or 5 attempts. I had to get the state of Florida involved to get my notes, my medical records, which should not have happened. I had to make a formal complaint. That Jermaine Hernandez, the nurse, had charted. I was walking in all capital letters. I was walking down the hallway, not lying on the gurney. It's a huge red flag. He knew he was caught. He knew he had a problem. And I don't know why he thought that I was walking down the hallway would work. Obviously, it doesn't. I've never transported a patient as a nurse walking except out of the hospital. If you're in the hospital, you're going to a procedure room, you're in a wheelchair or you're on a gurney. The hospital doesn't want to discuss why or anything about the walking. They just don't want to discuss it. So in any event, we went to the recovery room. Everything was fine in the recovery room. I stayed there for an hour or so because it's arterial bleeding, little pneumatic compress on that. Everything worked out all right. A little bit of oozing, no problem. Not that it's important, but I was oozing, not bleeding, oozing a little bit of blood. And I told the nurse we're oozing a little bit of blood so she could put a little bit of more air into this pneumatic compress there. And a male nurse never saw the guy, with a couple of rooms down because it's an open thing with curtains drawn. He heard me say, "Don't panic. Everything's going to be all right." I said, "What the hell is wrong with this guy?" Nobody's panicking. My nurse is doing her job. Everything's fine here, buddy. So then got dressed, collected my belongings, and left. Got notice shortly thereafter not to come back. I'm not going to be a cardiac patient anymore. Got a written notice of that. It's called retaliation, called retaliatory abandonment. which is not supported, and it's illegal what they tried to do. They told me that I could come to the ER if I've got a problem, but I would not be seen by any other physician. Now, this is contrary to Florida law and federal law. So they're telling me basically if I have a heart attack, I can go to the hospital there at Cleveland Clinic Western Hospital, and the ER doctor will treat me to the best of their ability. But if I needed to go to the cardiac cath lab for another stent or an angiogram or something, I'm not going to get it. It's just the way it is. And you can't do that. You can't pick and choose. If somebody's serious enough to have a heart attack, you just can't decide, we're not going to let you do that because we don't like you. And that's what they did. Come back to bite them, of course. So I went and tried to negotiate with them to get my rights back to be because it's the closest hospital to my house, to be a patient there for any future problem. They're not going to have that. I could see any other doctors at that time except cardiology. So I lost my primary cardiologist and the right to come back in for any cardiac follow-ups or anything else after the initial follow-up there. I went ahead and tried to get my medical records, and that was an ordeal. They'd give me a dribs and drabs. I finally got their attention. I filed a Florida bar complaint against the hospital general counsel. Barbara Del Castillo is her name. It's in the lawsuit that she's holding my medical records and stuff like that. And then they hired an outside law firm to address this, and that attorney named Antonia Simova, yeah, it's in there. She tried to get my medical records for me, and I got medical records, but not complete. I go back to her like a game. My consent form is oddly missing. Nobody knows where it is, she said. They couldn't find my consent form. So then I had to go back to her again, and I think Smilova, her previous work history before an attorney, she was a registered nurse and a nurse practitioner, not a dumb person. She knows hospitals and procedures. So I went back to her and said, it appears that your client there did an invasive procedure on my heart without a signed consent. Perhaps we should find the consent. They found the consent. And there along the top, where I wrote on there, my wife is to be present. It's like you're pulling teeth and you're a dentist. It doesn't want to come out, So I finally got medical records. To this day, I still have not got all my medical records. It appears that my medical records have been sanitized. Any reference to my autism is missing. Any reference to my dementia is missing. The email that we know exists from the ombudsman people to the staff is missing. All the notes, the post-op notes as far as what happened is missing. Anything related to my complaint is missing. And here we are now progressing in time. I got a 2-year window to file, and I don't want to file a lawsuit. I want my rights back to the patient. I tried to bend over backwards. I did not ask for a penny. They don't have to pay me. Just give me my rights back. My wife will be with me I'm 66. I'm going to need future medical care at some time or another. It's just a part of aging. So this continued on. I didn't get anywhere with the Bar Association, the complaint, but they did keep the complaint open long enough that gave the hospital time to comply. And then as we're going on, I had to file another complaint, and this time against both attorneys, Barbara Del Castillo, the in-house lawyer, and Antonia Smilova, the outside counsel, because it turns out that Ms. Smilova had filed a document in my name trying to get my medical records altered, changed, called it tampering of evidence, I believe is what you call it. And she got caught because the hospital records department is in Ohio, and they don't know anybody. They're just an office in Ohio. They don't know any of the players. They contacted me about changing my medical records because they thought that I wanted them changed. Now, the records that I'm talking about is that a year later, I am sitting at my computer where I'm sitting now, I almost pass out. My vision goes into a complete tunnel and then blacked. I'm blind. Several seconds later, it comes back out as a tunnel getting wider. It was interesting. Let me tell you that. I tried to get a appointment with my doctor. She's not named, but she's listed as a witness, and she's from India, and that turned out to be a problem, I believe, which really I wasn't aware at the time. And she has resigned from the hospital after I made a complaint internally about what she has done. I had a office visit scheduled. They canceled it. I had it rescheduled, and then they're pretending that I want my medications renewed, and I said no. You can renew my medications, but I'm here for a cardiac problem where I lost my vision, some sort of a cardiac arrhythmia, where the blood flow wasn't right, and that's why I'm coming in. So I finally got their attention. I went in there with the wife present the whole time, and the doctor was very nervous. She had evidently, and we haven't got discovery yet, had received instructions, get rid of this guy. So the examination that I got would not let me lay on the table, would not let me take my shirt off, would not let me open my shirt. Simply put the stethoscope on me for 3 or 4 seconds and whatnot. And she was not interested in doing anything else. She, though, charted that she checked my carotids because I'm a heart patient with known carotid or arterial disease, narrowing, so that she should have actually listened to them. There's a series of exams that you do, physical exams, just to see what's going on. She did none of that. She charted that my abdomen was soft, no rebound tenderness. She never touched my abdomen. She made a whole laundry list of things that she did not do. And my wife was there, and I'm a nurse. I know something about medical exams. So she left the room abruptly, said, I'll be back. And this was after she listened to my heart, and I believe that she heard something that concerned her. She came back in after talking to somebody outside. Don't know who it is yet. We haven't got discovery. I could not get an EKG, and that is alarming. EKG is a first-line medical test. They're portable machines. They're all over the hospital. You can get one with a phone call. The doctor can. She was not allowed to do that. And I believe that's because if my EKG was abnormal, it documented I've got a cardiac problem. And that would mean I need to see the cardiologist. They just can't dismiss me. So they denied me the EKG. It's a plausible deniability. Well, we didn't know. We didn't have an EKG. Well, they denied it to me. So my wife and I left. I did get the medications renewed, but that wasn't my primary concern. 20 minutes later, get a phone call from security. Security is saying that I am persona non grata. Don't come back for any reason at any time. You're not going to be seen. And my wife had told me that she watched, because I'm autistic, I'm somewhat focused here. And my wife had watched ununiformed or plainclothes security following us down the hall and whatnot. And my wife has a corporate background where they do use security. So she didn't tell me at the time, but we were being shadowed by security for whatever reason. And the hospital administration sent me a letter, again, abandoning me. My doctor sent me a letter and stressing the importance that I should see the ER immediately if I get a headache, like I've never had a headache before. So she recognized medically that there's some problems, and she tried to warn me to do this, this, and this. But I believe that her hands were tied. Had she not have gotten instructions prior to my visit, she would have ordered the EKG, and we'd have gone from there. She tried to get me set up to be seen by a cardiologist through the outside scheduling desk. I was denied. I was not going to see a cardiologist. Now, I found out later on, what had happened with the medical records. I didn't know at the time. And when I got the medical records, again, I had to demand them. I saw what she had charted, and there's nothing related to my heart the way that it should be and the exams, but she did chart my abdomen was, this is like a school exam. The abdomen's fine. She charted, she checked my carotid. She didn't look up my mouth, she didn't do any of this, but she charted, she did. Now that's a misdemeanor in Florida, false medical charting. So I wrote a detailed letter about that to the attorney, and I raised issues, realized that she was born and raised in India, trained in India, and she's board certified internist here, working as a primary care physician for Cleveland Clinic Weston Hospital. And she, in my opinion, has a problem with intimacy with men. Now, looking back at my interactions with her, which were 2 or 3 previous visits, she never really wanted to do anything intimate. I don't believe that I have a prostate problem, but if I did, this is a big issue because she's the first line doctor. If she fails to diagnose or chart or take issues with a man's prostate, you could have cancer, and what attorneys call it a missed opportunity to survive. Now, I don't believe that's my problem. I did not expect to have my prostate examined. But other men, older men than me, that use her as a primary care physician may not have gotten their money's worth, as the saying goes, because she definitely was not comfortable with me being a male. And I didn't really pick up on that originally because I didn't care. I knew what I wanted, and this is whatnot, and she's cooperative, and we had no problem, no bad words between us. But in retrospect, I believe that she did a disservice to male patients at the hospital by not being comfortable enough to address prostate issue or sexually transmitted diseases. I'm in Broward County, Florida. We have the highest incidence of senior citizen sexually transmitted diseases, or now they call them infections. They get away from the disease. STDs are now called STIs. Does that make you feel any better? So anyway, if she's not addressing this properly, physically examining, things like that, there's things that could be missed to the detriment of the patient. And I raised this in my letter, and she's no longer working for the hospital. I can't connect to the dots. I can't say 2 and 2 is 4 yet. We've not had discovery, so I don't have the benefit at this time of what discovery will bring with her resignation and stuff like that. So I did end up filing a lawsuit, and I had addressing the issues that happened to me. That's where you picked it up here. And in looking back, my lawsuit mimics the uptick, the definite increase in average Joe citizen realizing that the police, the authority figure person, can't do what they're doing unless you let them do it. And more people are learning from video channels like this video channel that you have rights, and you have the right to exercise those rights. In medicine, what people don't understand is your number one right in medicine is to exercise all of your other rights without fear of recourse or abandonment. And I was abandoned, the retaliatory abandonment. And this is what we're going to be addressing. But I have learned a lot from channels such as this. Now, I don't advocate being flippant with the police officer or trying to raise drama. But if you're right, you're right. And there are certain laws and procedures that need to be followed. And if you're pulled over for speeding, give me the ticket, I'll sign it, and I'm gone. And that's the way the law is, from what I understand. There's no need to be, searching for drugs and all kinds of other stuff unless you can justify that. And by looking at these videos on YouTube, there's a lot of justification that just doesn't hold up. So being somewhat educated in the YouTube videos with that, I applied the same logic to what happened to me and the authoritarian figures that I came into, and that I'm a nurse. Now, specifically, I was an OBGYN nurse. Okay, I deliver babies. If the doctor doesn't show up in time, I deliver the baby. I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of female patients. I've had hundreds of boyfriends or husbands looking over my shoulder when I'm examining the wife or the girlfriend. I have never asked a man to leave the room. I've never told a woman, you can't have him with you right now. Was a boyfriend, I'm a husband, and you're not telling me that if my wife's the patient. I wouldn't do that to anybody else. And that's the standard that I work at. I was 35 before I became a nurse, so I'm not an authoritarian figure. I have a uniform, you got to listen to me. No, I don't really care if you listen to me or not. I'm there to help you. You don't want the help? I'm not going to cause a problem. So it really bothers me, the attitudes that I was, subjected to. And then when I complained internally, not asking for a penny, I was just treated like I didn't exist. I was ignored. Like the medical records, I had to prove that I knew something existed before they would give it to me. It's just fighting me tooth and nail, but nicely, mostly ignoring me. So here we are. And we'll see what happens. Do you have any questions?
Well, I was just thinking it's funny how you said that, because that's how they usually handle it. They sweep it up under the rug. They ignore it. They make it seem like it's not even there.
Well, if you Google today, sexual assault of a patient and Cleveland Clinic, I have documented sexual assaults covered up by Cleveland Clinic since the 1990s. It's not unusual. The USA Today newspaper, I believe in 2018, wrote an article about the tactics used by Cleveland Clinic to cover these things up. Right now, in Cleveland, Ohio, there's a male physician who is facing 9 counts of sexual misconduct. And when you say 9, how could that be? Because Cleveland Clinic ignored counts, the first complaint, the second complaint, ignored them. They ignored them to the extent until the police said, we're going to do something. And then all of a sudden, Cleveland Clinic takes it seriously. Now, I'm a bit of a history buff when it comes to sexual assaults because I was a victim. If you remember Simone Biles and Dr. Larry Nassar, who's doing basically life in prison, they have tracked back former patients 7 years before Simone Biles was examined and exploited. And 7 years earlier, patients were reporting this doctor, and it was ignored. In, I believe, February of 2021 or 2022, I don't remember, there was a lesbian coach, gymnastics coach, who was sentenced to 2 years in jail, federal prison, because female students obviously, had come to her and saying this doctor was molesting us, and she covered for the doctor. And they were able to document this, and all of this came out after the fact because nobody paid attention to the students. When I say students, we're talking college-age girls, and some of them younger, some of them older. Since 2010, over $2 billion has been paid out. $1 billion in sexual misconducts related in a clinical setting, male patients, female patients. With Cleveland Clinic here in Florida, there was a doctor who served 8 years in prison for sexually assaulting male senior citizens. I'm a senior citizen, I'm a man. He was arrested and tried, got 8 years in prison. And this is documented. You can find this on the Google. And unfortunately, they just cover for the physician. In my case, it was a nurse who I believe did lose his job, but they're not saying anything else. And there's a problem when you allow somebody to resign. First of all, in Florida, the hospital is obligated to report the allegations that I made to the state of Florida. They didn't. By allowing somebody to resign, or allegedly, because we don't know what the circumstances are, because we haven't got discovery yet. So this time I'll say they allegedly allowed him to resign. He goes to work for some other hospital, and that other hospital has no clue. And this perpetuates the series of the situation.
Right, because he just moves to the next one, starts doing the same stuff at the next one. It's
a predator is a predator is a predator. And today, outside of medicine, we are seeing more teachers. I'm 66. I don't recall any teachers having sex with students when I was a student. And
Me,
nowadays, yeah, nowadays it's every month there's a new one. And what's alarming, what I've noticed because I follow the sexual assault stuff, is that if it's a female student and a no, let me back up. If it's a male student and a female teacher, somewhere in the article in the press, they'll use the gender of the student, he or something. You can figure out female teacher, male student. But when it's a female student and a female teacher, you look through the article, you can't tell what's male or female because the press writes it in such a way to protect the girl who is often a willing participant, with the female teacher. An authority figure, you can't get away with it. You can't justify it. Saying it's her idea, that's not going to fly. But we're seeing more and more public awareness today. Back to your specialty with law enforcement, if you were to Google and follow female state troopers and female officers, there is a number of them that have lost their jobs or actually been charged sexual crimes for doing roadside cavity checks. If you know any female police officers, some of them go their entire careers without ever doing a cavity check on another woman. And then you've got the predator. She'll drive across the county to get a chance to do one. She lets the male officers know, you need me, call me, and I'm red lights down to help you out, buddy. And departments are now having to address that and putting severe limitations on what can be done at the roadside. And it's just a heightened public awareness with the police misconduct. And in my case, I'm hoping to raise awareness on the doctor or nurse misconduct and the hurdles that the patient has to go over and through just to be heard. And I'm a nurse. If I wasn't a nurse, if I said something, I'd probably be even ignored even more. And I haven't told you the dementia part. They called the police on me. I filed 4 complaints with the state of Florida. The 4 complaints were vetted at one level, sent to the next level, vetted again, sent to the next level, made it up to the prosecutorial level. And I've got letters to confirm this. The state actually took my complaints to the probable cause panel, they call it, which ultimately did not prosecute. But I made it through all the checks and balances, got to the prosecutorial stage. And at that point, the 2 attorneys for the hospital called a BSO, Broward Sheriff's Office deputy detective that they knew because he works in Weston. And they brought him in, tried to say that I was extorting them. So he calls me up. I had my letters with me. I had my documentation. I went to meet with him. Nice guy, not a bully. He didn't try to be my friend. He tried to be neutral. And he actually read the letters, saw my advancing complaints, and he's the one that I found out that he was told that I was going to jump up off the operating table and attack staff if my wife was not there. So he was helpful in that point. He easily saw, he ran my background check. I'm no DUIs because I don't drink, period. No arrest drug issues, no domestic violence. I'm a nobody. I'm a guy that goes through life. If you didn't know me, you wouldn't even recognize me. I'm just a nobody. And so it worked out well with him, but they tried to leverage him to get me to withdraw my complaint. They sent me a letter telling me that I could lose my nursing license for filing these complaints. And I followed a set procedure. I followed the pathway. And it's just, they're getting panicked. What am I going to do? Well, here we are in court, going into court now. My life.
Yeah. I mean, they can only push so much. I mean, and that's what I tell people, eventually they push the wrong people, the people that, like you said, you have knowledge of what's supposed to go on in the hospital. So it's a lot easier for you to spot, discrepancies and abuses, just like when it's me with the officers. I'm a little more versed in law, so I could spot them discrepancies, those
Yep.
violations that most people are like, "Oh, he didn't violate you." Actually, technically, he did.
Yeah. Well, my late father was an actual real trial attorney. He's the guy. I mean, when I say attorney, he was Perry Mason of his era. Okay, he actually went into court and argued the cases. He didn't do real estate. He didn't do probate. He didn't do family law. He was the actual trial lawyer, and he taught me as a little kid. You get angry and hit somebody in the nose, you got the problem. You smash out a windshield, you got a problem. Use the system. It's not a great system, but it's the only system we got. So when they push my buttons and I get angry, I don't make threats. I simply use the system effectively as I can. And that's what I've done. And that's partly the frustrating problem because if I act it out, I'm going to get you or do this or do that. It gives them uh, verifiable cause to be afraid of me. I never did any of that. Use the system.
That's it. That's it. Learn the system, use the system.
Yeah, yeah. It's what we got.
Well, Bruce, like I said, we're gonna put some of the complaint up on the
Yep.
screen for people to look at. I'll give them the information to where they can find the complaint and look it over themselves if they'd like. But
And if
uh,
you could ask if anybody else is a victim, please come forward. You know, you not to help me. You don't have to help me. You need to come forward because, like with Simone Biles' case, she wouldn't shut up. That's why the case went ahead. She would not shut up. I'm not shutting up. If something happened to you, say something. And it's important because you'll help patients in the future that you'll never meet. But the predator will be taken off the floor, hopefully. So please say something.
right, absolutely. Okay, well, again, thank you very much, Bruce.
All
Like I said,
righty.
we'll put that stuff up there, and they'll have access to that. I mean, it was when you reached out to me, and we talked on the phone, and I got a chance to read the complaint. I said, "Oh my God, this is just horrible. What's going
Mhm.
on?"
Yep.
So
Well, we have dementia is growing by leaps and bounds. They're predicting 50 million or more Americans will have dementia by the next 20 years. Autism is being diagnosed more and more and more, especially in adults. So hospitals need to be prepared. I'm not a unique thing. They have to deal with dementia patients that have heart problems frequently. They need to train the staff. Autistic problems. Now, I'm in a good shape because I'm highly functional. But I'm not a headbanger. I'm not a hand flipper. But that's what they expect. Certain types of OCD behavior, like Mr. Monk on TV, Adrian Monk,
yeah,
that's not me. So the obvious ones get more attention, but people like myself, they don't. And all I asked was to have my wife with me, and the hospital administration agreed. So it's a growing problem, lack of training and accountability.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, it is. And hopefully, like you said, people stand up, and
Yeah,
that way it can be addressed.
yeah,
Because that's the only way it will be addressed. Because if
yeah.
everybody stays quiet, then the evil stuff hides in the darkness. So we have to bring that light and shine it on it
Yeah, well, I
to
want to thank you.
expose it.
Thank you for taking the interest. And this is public information. I'll stand behind it. You can. I have no copyright claim on any of this. You do what you see fit as far as uh, letting other people know. Fair use under the Copyright Act, I believe. And let's see where this ends up.
All right, absolutely.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Hey guys, Rogue Nation here with you. Today, we're gonna be finishing up this part of the story with Bruce. You folks have already watched the first half, the interview with Bruce. He gave you a rundown on his case. Totally disgusting, this abuse of authority this one nurse exercised and almost cost this gentleman his life. Just terrible, really. So we're going to look over just a little bit of the case. I will have a link for anybody that wants to read over the case. It's 38 pages, as you can see here. You can find this. This is the complaint. You can find this on the Broward County Clerk's website, as you can see in the address bar. But I will put the link in the description. Now, for some reason, if the link doesn't work, you can just go to the browardclerk.org website. It'll have a case search button, and just use this case number here you see at the top of the document, the CACE-23-013-577, and that'll pull up the whole case. And then you just look for the documents and you look for the complaint, and that the complaint is what the case is about. So we're going to start here, and Bruce, as you can see, is representing himself against the Cleveland Clinic, Florida Corporation, the hospital. Demand for jury trial, $500,000 in compensation and $500,000 in punitive damages. And he gives the Florida statute, or his amount awarded by jury. It says, Plaintiff Wheatley points out that this lawsuit is a natural and expected extension of today's American society and the continuing evolution of American jurisprudence. While there is a noted time lag, this case is following and mirroring the ever-growing civilian population and their use of existing law and legal procedures to hold accountable law enforcement officers and government entities for continuing violations of constitutional and state law, including but not limited to civil rights. In this instant case, there is no argument by anyone that medical patients do not have rights, but instead, Plaintiff Wheatley details here the difficulties and obstacles for patients in exercising their rights without fear of abandonment or other forms of hospital retaliation. So, people, right? And so, when people get power, okay, be it at a government job, at a corporate job, doesn't matter, right? Power corrupts, and you get a little power and you think it gives you more power than what it does. Okay, think of hall monitors in school, right? When we were kids. You give people a little bit of power and it goes to their head. So this is what's happening here in Bruce's case. You have a nurse who is the head of the department, nursing for cardiology, I guess, and she got upset that, I guess she wasn't consulted about Mr. Bruce having his wife there. And even though it was okay, the administration had given their okay, and even though he had followed all the procedures that he needed to, because again, he is a nurse as well, so he realizes there are procedures to go through, policies at the hospital in order to, have this stuff done. She just didn't like that she wasn't, I guess, included in the decision-making process, and was told that she had to do this. And she, I don't got to do nothing, so it says, showcasing his efforts for accountability and the illegal, improper, and egregious conduct used to deny him his rights and redress and accountability, a true conflict of interest exists, whereas The employing defendant hospital is thwarting lawful efforts to hold them and their employees accountable. The well-established pattern of an employing entity, be it a government or a medical facility, where a complaint may be filed by a citizen patient, and that entity, the government or hospital management, exonerates their own employees, only to later have significant liability and penalty assigned by a civil court procedure, is seen across the country today in ever-increasing numbers. This is exactly what I was talking about, government or hospital management. Same thing with the hospital with the police department. You complain, you make a complaint on a doctor or a nurse or somebody in the hospital, and it's just going to go to their bosses. So in a lot of instances, even if they don't like what's going on, even if they don't endorse it, they're still trying to hide it, right? Because then it gives them a bad image, right? So let's say like the case that Bruce brought up where the doctor was touching patients. They don't want to admit to that, right? So any complaints, they say, yeah, no, okay, yeah, that's been handled, or they sweep it under the rug or whatever, because they don't want it getting out. That damages their reputation. As a result, local governments are having to take another look at their own internal complaint policies and procedures, and to revise as needed to address the obvious power imbalance and lack of transparency. The true underlying issue is found in reviewing the labor market and the growing issue of not only a lack of qualified applicants, but also members of the general population who actually want to apply and work in certain capacities. Jobs such as law enforcement and nursing, medicine today. Says Plaintiff Wheatley points out that due to the labor market issues, government and medical facilities are having to tolerate bad actors and their conduct simply because there is no one standing in the doorway waiting to be hired for that position. Unlike most medical facility liability lawsuits where a mistake may have been made or the wrong diagnosis was made, in the case of Plaintiff Wheatley, actual intentional harmful acts were knowingly undertaken, and personal biases and attitudes against autistic patients prevailed over common sense and legally required standards. Such egregious personal biases and conduct continued even after management was made aware of such conduct, and apparently management representatives turned a blind eye to obvious breaches in care, and as a result, Plaintiff Wheatley could very easily have died as a result. The end product here is the permanent denial of any future care, a unilateral and arbitrary decision made with no due process or legitimate appealability, was based in personal animosity and vindictiveness, and not as a result of Plaintiff Wheatley's conduct as a patient. And it goes in the jurisdictional statement and identification of parties and stuff like this. We're not going to get into that. And you can read the meat of the lawsuit there on the site. And Bruce has already gone over it with you. I don't want to take up all your time with reading stuff that we've already been over, that Bruce has already went over. But the complaint has the details, the nuts and bolts, like everything you need. Now, Bruce did a great job of outlining it, but the complaint lays it all out for you. So if you're interested, definitely check that out. It's a good read. It's 38 pages. Probably take you an hour and a half maybe to read. Maybe shorter. Who knows? I don't know how fast you read. But again, it's crazy to me how this is going on here in America, or anywhere for that matter. I mean, people need to be held accountable, no matter where they work, who they work for, what their job title or position is. I mean, it's insane. This man could have lost his life, easily lost his life. And would she have ever been held liable? Who knows? Maybe. Maybe not. You know, maybe it would have been swept under the rug, you know? So, we have to be vigilant. We have to know our rights, like this gentleman did. We have to be willing to stand for our rights, as this gentleman did. So, thank you to Mr. Bruce Wheatley. And I hope, you know, this gets resolved in his favor. Because it was definitely egregious. You know, I hope these guys pay. So, all right, guys, we'll get back at you later. We got lots of more stories coming up. A lot of interesting stuff is going to be coming out. Thanks again, guys.